Welcome back to This Week. Time now to get the views of our political and media experts, the former chair of the State Democratic Party, Bob Tuke, and syndicated talk show host Steve Gill. Welcome, gentlemen. Nice to see you both again.
Great to see you.
We see the continuing lawsuit in Murfreesboro over the proposed mosque, the building site, the mosque being constructed there. And this one not really over the religious aspects, but over the qualifications. Was all the paperwork done? Was the Sunshine Law violated? Did all the I's get dotted, the T's get crossed? But it could stop construction if indeed those things did not happen.
Well, the hook is the process. The reality is there's opposition by some to putting a mosque in Murfreesboro, and this is vastly different than the issue involving the Ground Zero mosque. I think ultimately, unless they can show there is something that ties this particular mosque to either terrorist funding or terrorist operations, this mosque is going to get built. So even though they're fighting over process, right now the issue is, did they dot the I's, cross the T's, and did they act consistently with the way they treated other projects that might have come before them, like the Bible theme park or something that came up a while back. But all that's about process, only on the paper. Their real purpose is to block the mosque.
Yep, and this is about the open meetings law in Tennessee, which requires that you give proper notice of the meeting, you give the notice of what you know you're going to cover in the meeting. If there's an agenda that you've settled on, you notice the agenda, then you follow your agenda and you make access to the public, give public access to the documents you're considering and the matters you're considering. So it is indeed dotting the I's and crossing the T's. As we saw from some of the excerpts, though, of the hearing itself, the attorney representing the plaintiffs clearly trying to get into some of the merits of the case. I doubt that the judge will get to the merits, but if they're not treating this hearing, if they didn't treat this matter the same way they traditionally treated other matters of similar nature, then the judge may find that they didn't follow the rules, their own rules of the meeting. So we'll see. But I agree with Steve. The ultimate issue about whether this center gets built is going to have a lot more to do with where's the funding coming from, where is the leadership coming from, and should it be in fact built, more as a political decision, frankly, among the people who live in Rutherford County.
This issue is really quite simple. They either gave the proper notification or they did not, and that'll be the decision.
And ultimately, they may hit the reset button and start over. I don't think that this process issue ultimately derails the mosque. It's again, they may be able to fight a delaying action, but again, this is different than the issue of the Ground Zero Mosque in New York. Entirely different issues. That one, I'm not sure will ever get built. This one, I think it's going to be hard to stop it ultimately from being built.
And as we tape this show on this afternoon, the lawsuit has not yet been decided. It could be late this week. It could be early next week. Either way, this is for a temporary restraining order, so the decision will either stop the construction temporarily or it will continue to move on. As we saw also in town, the assistant U.S. attorney talking about keeping an eye on what's going on here. Here in Tennessee, there has not been any violence. There has been vocal opposition as well as vocal support, has been some destruction of construction property at the site, but no real violence. And these folks are in town to make sure, kind of saying in advance, we're keeping an eye on this. We don't want violence to grow out of this opposition.
Well, I think that's right. And there was violence to property in the sense of that destruction, but no violence to people. There have been threats apparently made, but I don't think it rises to the level that that assistant U.S. attorney was addressing, and that's good. I don't think Tennesseans are going to stand for violence on either side of this. I think Tennesseans are better people than that, and so I have confidence that Tennesseans are going to treat this as it should be treated, which is an issue. It's an important issue, and I think the people of Rutherford County will be heard on it, and I'm hoping the ultimate decision that is made is one that's wise, and then I believe people will just go with the decision.
I think it's fair to say, too, the opposition, while vocally strong, they're not advocating violence. They don't want to see violence either. They're just opposed to this particular building and the particular mosque.
And we, as Bob points out, we really haven't seen any violence. We've seen some vandalism that nobody even knows who actually committed some of that. I do think that the rhetoric of the U.S. attorney was a bit much to say that we've seen unspeakable acts of violence against mosques and Muslims in this country. That is just simply not true. We saw an unspeakable act of violence on 9/11 when 3,000 Americans were killed at the hands of Islamic jihadists. We saw 13 American soldiers killed by Major Malik Nidal Hassan at Fort Hood. They did an investigation, and they were not even willing to speak the connection between his cries of Allah Akbar as he committed this act, his pronouncements for Islamic Sharia advancement, and the act acts that he committed. We need to get a grip on where the real violence is coming from in these Islamic jihadists around the world. We're under a terror threat right now because of fears of a Mumbai-style commando terror attack in Europe and in this country. The unspeakable acts of violence are not being committed by Christians against Muslims in this country and around the world, and the rhetoric of this administration may inspire acts of violence, and they need to tone it back.
Well, I think that those remarks were over the top. And, the truth is, if you look at the violence that has occurred in this country, apart from 9/11, it's been violence committed by Christians, not against Muslims, but I guess against their fellow Christians, not as a religious matter, but just as a violence matter. And there's too much violence in this country, and there's too much talk of violence in this country, and we all need to scale it back. But the good news is I don't think there is unspeakable acts of violence against Muslims in this country, and I hope there won't be.
Other topic going on, obviously the midterm elections coming up. The president back on the campaign trail, looking like he did in 2008, rallying the troops, as it were. But it does seem that the interest level, especially for young people, not quite the same for the midterm election as it was for the 2008 presidential election. That could really hurt the Democrats.
Well, it could, and it's up to Democrats to get our base out. We have to get out. We know that on the right side of the right wing of the Republican Party, there's some very fervent people who will get out to vote. They're working very, very hard. They're getting their message out. It's up to Democrats to get our message out. We have to work very hard. I think a lot of independents are going to stay home, to be honest with you. I think some moderate Republicans may stay home as well. But if the Democrats don't turn out, it's our own fault. So we have to get out there. We have to get our message out there and work just as hard as these Republicans are working.
Republicans have targeted the 6th District in Tennessee. They want to take over control of the House and Senate. The House probable, the Senate a little more tough, but it's kind of in the GOP's backyard right now for them to kind of follow through.
Yeah, and I don't think you're going to see any of the Democrats in Tennessee bringing Barack Obama, Nancy Pelosi, or Harry Reid to town to campaign for them. The difference in now and 2 years ago for President Obama is that he was on rhetoric 2 years ago. Now he has a record to deal with, and the record is not one that he and the Democrats can defend. He promised that he was going to let you keep your doctor. Obamacare doesn't let you do that. He promised that you would save money with Obamacare. You're not going to see that. Said you could keep your health insurance. Well, the McDonald's is getting ready to cut health insurance for 30,000 people. The rhetoric doesn't live to the record, and that's what Democrats are having to defend now. That's why they ran out of Washington this week adjourning rather than passing tax cuts for the people they said they wanted to get them when they had the votes to do it.
Now,
they can't run on the record.
The truth is the record that Obama was running on in 2008 was the George W. Bush record that got this country in the ditch in the first place, and that's the message that we have to get out to people.
Election day, 5 weeks away. Steve Gill, Bob Tuke, appreciate your insight. Stay with us as we continue in a moment.